So, ethics and boundaries. I've combined these two ideas because really to me they are two sides of the same coin. If we can stay within our boundaries, if we can manage our boundaries and the boundaries for the coaching partnership, then we're staying within our ethics. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to explain why I think that really it's that sort of clarifying, safety creating shared expectation which serves the task of keeping us in our boundaries and by doing that in our ethics. So the first thing I want to talk about is setting the frame. So a frame gives something edges. It creates a distinction between what needs to stay outside and what's invited inside. And the first part of that is in the contracting process. So that is where we talk about the purpose and the process, as we talked about last time. It's where we discuss logistical things like fees and follow-up, how we negotiate setting timings for a session, when it's going to begin, when it's going to end. It's also where we discuss the nature and the limits of confidentiality and how information might be shared between the client, the coach and the sponsor. And by sponsor we usually mean whoever's paying for the coaching. What expectations do they have? What outcomes do they want to see from the coaching? How do they want to be kept informed about that? All of these are to do with ethics and boundary management. Now, setting the frame is generally quite straightforward. It's co-created, it's thought about together and agreed together. Holding to that frame, holding to those boundaries is much more of a challenge. And that's because of this idea of the here and now relationship. And if you've not come across that term before, it's basically the belief that whatever we're talking about, that the personality, that the habits, that the ways of being that we usually are talking about as out there, separate from the coaching relationship, eventually they'll end up showing up in here. And in my experience, whatever it is that a client is bringing for coaching will eventually show up in the coaching relationship within 3 sessions. So, for example, I've got a client at the moment who is wanting to work on how they communicate to have more impact within their team. Within 1 session, that topic was showing up in the here and now relationship. There are other ways that that's likely to show up, and I'm just going to touch on 3 here. The first is time management. They want to talk about how they're managing their time, how they're prioritising, or how they're finding it difficult to say no to certain things which lead them into competing commitments. Now again, I've found that within 3 sessions, that topic, that challenge is going to show up in the coaching relationship. So it might be the second week, they're late for the session, or at the last minute they send an email saying, I can't make today because something's come up, or they come along not having completed the task that they've set themselves. And although I'm not going to bring any judgment about that, I'm just curious about what there is to learn here. They might be projecting some judgment onto me because they might inside themselves have quite a lot of judgment about what they see as their failure to achieve that task. They might have some guilt about it, and that gives them some complicated feelings about coming to me and talking to me about it. The second area is around beginnings and endings. Beginnings and endings is when the unconscious data is most close to the surface, and you'll often see that by they coming to the session almost with a little bit of resistance or avoidance to what they're talking about, or are they just coming open, eager, expectant, ready to work together. Those beginnings are a rich opportunity for learning and to experiencing data that is showing up in the here and now relationship. It's an opportunity then to reflect on and manage boundaries and make sure we're staying in our ethics. The same is true of ending. In a good coaching session, we'll both kind of naturally sense we've reached the end. The reason we'll both sense that is because we've begun by clarifying what the task is for today. We might have reviewed what the task is and tweaked the sort of contract just for that session as we've gone along. And there becomes an obvious moment when we've we've achieved what we've set out to achieve. And the third thing, which is probably the most complex to navigate consistently well, I would go as far as to say that this is an area where one needs to have skillful, experienced supervision. And that's to do with managing the boundaries around emotion in coaching conversations. Now, emotion is a gift, and emotion is a really important element to invite into coaching sessions. Emotions are key in motivating us. They're key in telling us what really matters to us. They're also key in telling us what we don't want and what we want to move away from. And they're really helpful as well, because when there's strong emotion, if it's not too strong, it's really helpful actually at sort of laying down thinking into our memory. So we're much more likely to remember something if we've had a transformative emotional experience attached to it. At the same time, emotions can be strong, they can be overwhelming, they can be unsettling. Knowing what is appropriate emotion in the coaching context can be a challenge. What I've found really helpful in terms of identifying what's an appropriate use of or place of emotions in the coaching partnership is to draw on learning from transactional analysis and their idea of life positions. What I want in the coaching partnership is a shared belief and position that we are both capable, both full of potential and agency, and that we're going to work together in creative collaboration, what transactional analysis would call an I'm okay and you're okay position. Both the coach and the client feel good about themselves and feel good about the other. But we can have situations in the coaching partnership where, for example, the client comes in what's called an I'm not okay, you're okay position. And that means that they're really looking for somebody else to take some responsibility, to fix, to rescue. They're not connected with their own potential. And if they come in that position, there's going to be a tendency to flight for them. Flight to challenge, flight if there's unconscious hopes that they will be held or fixed or rescued are not met, and that doesn't enable creative collaboration. If the coach is in that position of I'm not okay, you're okay, actually there's also going to be a tendency to flight, but it will be a flight because I don't have what you need, I'm not able to rescue you, so I need to get out of the way of this need and this demand. An even less creative space that the client and the coach can work from is I'm not okay and you're not okay. If both of you feel that you haven't got the potential and the creativity and the agency to move things forward, then really you're in a temptation to freeze and you're not going to get anything creative done together. The last segment is the I'm okay, you're not okay position. If either the coach or the client come in that position, there's going to be a tendency to fight, which is you represent really a threat to reject. If we come back to the idea of boundaries and ethics, I think that makes it quite clear that really we need to be in the I'm okay, you're okay position. And if we start to notice that that's not what's showing up in the coaching partnership, that's where we need to think about signposting to alternative services or situations. If we realise that we're not in an I'm okay position and we're not viewing them as okay and full of potential and creativity and power, then we either need to do some supervision and get ourselves into a better space to serve them, or we need to actually say that you need to work with somebody else. Similarly, if we think they are not in an I'm okay, you're okay position, they either need to find a coach that they think is okay, or it may be telling you that they need to do some deeper work with a counsellor or a therapist, or wait until they're not in that space anymore to re-engage with the creative, future-focused work of coaching.